So who can tell me the difference between black box testing and white box testing? Any answer here? Difference between black box testing and white box testing.
Black box, we don't look at the code to test, but in white box, we have to see the code and check.
Design the test cases based on the looking at the code, studying the code. Very
Yeah.
good. Yes, that's true. And then one another aspect we studied importantly is that there are different testing based on what you test. You have unit testing, integration testing, and system testing. Anyone who can give me answer for this? Unit testing, integration testing, system testing. In unit testing, we spoke about testing a class as a unit. Let's say you're doing object-oriented software development. So that will be your unit testing. Integration testing is adding classes to come up with components and subsystems. So you do integration testing. So you integrate one by one. You don't integrate everything all together. And then system testing is once everything is ready, you might test for functionality or for quality requirements. Or the last thing you do is the acceptance testing. Is you test in the customer environment, the whole system, and if with the customer data, real, it's almost like a real run. And if it passes the acceptance test, the customer accepts the project, right? So that's acceptance testing. We also spoke about those discussions that acceptance or this unit testing should be black box or white box. What's the answer? Unit testing, is it black box testing or white box testing? Anyone who remembers this?
Why?
Yeah,
Unit
exactly. Unit testing is white box testing. You're right, exactly. And integration testing is also white box testing because you're integrating incrementally and checking how the integration works. But the system testing is a black box testing. And for black box testing, we use requirement specification as the main idea, main artifact for designing test cases. But for unit testing and integration testing, of course, the artifact is the code because we are looking at it as a white box. So we look at the code to decide the code, testing. Another important concept which was mentioned was testing can only show the presence of errors, not their absence. So this is very important to keep in mind, right? So the more you test, the more confidence you have that the code is good and it has few bugs. But you cannot guarantee that the code has no bugs. That's very difficult to do. Okay. So this is something to keep in mind. Also, we can test for different ideas. So we can test for the correctness that the software is working as intended, performance of the software. So the load testing or stress testing, stuff like that. How many concurrent users can be supported? The software can have how many records and stuff like that. Robustness. So if you give wrong inputs, how does it behave? That's another type of thing. Installation can also be tested. So you try to do installation and see if there are issues in there, right? So there can be many things which can be tested. And testing also addresses both verification and validation. And we say testing is applied for the implementation as an artifact. You don't do requirements and design testing, right? You do implementation, you test the implementation. But it's one of the technique of verification and validation. And testing is not the only technique for verification and validation of implementation. You have other things like code reviews, where you formally look at the code and decide, look at it and make some decisions whether it's okay or no, or you try to find some mistakes in the code, or even, for example, think about this. Can you look at the can you do testing and can you confirm that the coding standards have been followed or no, or naming conventions have been used properly or no? No, you cannot do, right? Testing cannot tell you about those things. So you need to look at the code, and that's why code reviews are also very important. Testing and code reviews are complementary, and both of them should be normally carried out. We spoke also about this idea of fault and failure. So we say fault is the problem where inside your code which is leading to failure. So failures are the effects of fault. So once you do testing, you do the test, you get the report based on your test cases, and you try to find out failures. Once you identify the failures, you give it back to the development team. Based on the failures, they try to locate faults and fix them. Okay, and then we spoke also about this idea that once I fix the problem, I know once the fixing of the problem itself is not testing, it's called debugging. right? But once we fix the problem, we want to rerun all the test cases because we understand that fixing problem in one area might create problems other places if we did not do a careful thought about it, right? So we need to retest the whole thing again, not only those test cases which were failed test cases, all of them. And this is also one idea of the idea of regression testing, that you keep testing again and again. Okay. This one is speaking about why do failures occur, and failures occur for many reasons. But interesting to see that coding actually is less than a quarter approximately of the testing problems. So coding is not the real problem of testing. The main problem of testing is specification or requirement, so to say. So why we get failures? We get because of poor requirements, in a sense that our requirement is not consistent, they are missing details, or it was not really thought about and stuff like that. So that's very important, which leads us again to the discussion that, yeah, requirements engineering, you have to spend enough time to do it right because it has huge consequences. If you have problems in your requirement, it leads to problem in many places. So good. So let's continue. So we spoke about this. So there are problems like related to specification, which leads to failures in our testing. Also, we have other issues like late discovery of serious project flaws. For example, modules, they do not fit together. So this module expects output in this format, the other one expects output in a different format, or they're different units. This is speaking about inches, this is speaking about meters, for example. So those can also be reasons of that, right? Or untrustworthy build and release process. So the implementation was done in a chaotic way. So there are many reasons of that. This one is important to see in mind. So this is telling you that the cost of a bug, the cost of a failure. So if the problem, let's say, was in specification and you fix it in specification, this is the cost. But the more delay you have, right, the cost of the failure and fixing it becomes higher and higher. And we spoke about this sometime before, that one of the reasons of that being higher is that if you have a problem in test, for example, and you found a failure, then you're going to refer back to design implementation. Implementation might not find that failure because of implementation. It refers back to design. Design does not find it. It goes back to specification, and maybe the problem was in the specification. And as we already saw, that majority of the problems are basically, in fact, coming from specification. So that also explains that the rework, the finding the problem itself takes time. And then if you fix your problem in specification, you have to fix your design, you have to fix your implementation and so forth. So the cost keeps increasing. So we have to be careful about that. So we spoke about this, so I'm just going to go quickly over it. So black box testing, we said that we don't have a look into the code. We basically design test cases based on the specification. Okay. And of course, white box testing, we look at the code and decide the test cases. Of course, the problem with the white box testing in that sense is that you cannot start designing your test cases until your implementation is ready, because then only you can access the code, right? Yeah.
So, Doctor.
Yes, please.
So black box means we look to the output of the code, not the code.
Yeah, black box means you're treating the system as a black box. You give input, you get output. So you're testing the input matches, and the output matches the expected output, which is, from the specification, the requirements.
Okay.
Right. So yeah, we spoke about this. So I'm just going to quickly go through them. So we have functionality testing, we have performance testing or quality testing, and the acceptance testing, which is the final test normally we do. And the idea of regression testing is that we retest everything if there was some fixing. Yeah, so again, we said in the testing activities, one of the most important thing is to decide or design the test cases. This is very important, right? So what is test cases consist of? It consists of set of inputs, right? What inputs you want to test with, and what is your expected result? And if there is some setup, you need to make it. For example, you want to test what happens if a student has currently 17 credit hours registered in a semester, and he wants to add another 3 hours. What happens? So input would be that you decide a particular given course, 3 credit hour course, to be added to the student. Expected result, let's say you're assuming that the system gives a message that no, this cannot be done because it exceeds the maximum limit, credit limit. This is the expected result. But what is the execution condition? The execution condition is you have to create a student record, and you have to already populate it with 17 hours, credit hours, right? That has to be the precondition to start that test case. So this is what is saying the execution condition or the execution environment. So you have to get that ready to start that testing. Because if you create a new student record with no credit hours already inside him, then of course once you try to add a 3 credit hour course, it will add it because it's not exceeding the credit limit in that sense. You see my point? So you have to get that thing ready before even testing. So these ideas are there across all the testing idea. And of course, once you have the test cases, you do the evaluation. So you run the test and just check the actual thing, right? And this can be automated a lot. So you have frameworks and tools in testing which can help you execute the test itself. We'll see very quickly as a quick introduction, there's a tool in Java called JUnit, which helps you automate the unit testing process. So testing itself can be automated to most extent. The main challenge is the creation of the test case design. And of course, once you do the test, you get this actual output versus expected output. You create a report, and this is the reporting. So you give this report back to the development team, the managers, to see how was the result of your testing process. Right. Again, reports can be automated as testing itself. So this is one example here in JUnit. It's a framework for Java programming language, so it helps you doing unit testing. Yeah, it mainly uses assertions for testing expected results. We'll see very shortly. And there are many versions of JUnit. It keeps changing again. By the time this slide we were developing it, the latest was JUnit 5. But of course, there can be future new versions of it. So how does it happen? Let's look at this JUnit. So this is assuming this is your class you want to test. So it is under some package. It's called my class, and assuming that it has two methods, add and multiply. Very simple ideas. You take two parameters x and y. You just basically return the addition of that. In the multiply method, you take two parameters x and y, and just you return the multiplication of that. So this is a very simple class you want to test. So what will you do in this, right? So what you'll do, of course, some imports based on the JUnit framework. But the most important thing is, so you're going to say, for example, the same class name, my class test. So the class name is my class test. The original class name was my class. The new class name is my class test. And what are you going to do is you're going to create a new instance of your original class. You create an object of your original class. And then these are the annotations @test. This annotation says that what comes next is a test case. So this is one test case. This is another test case. Each test case is a method. So you are saying, for example, test add assert equals result 8 tester.add 6,2. So tester was the object you created, and you're executing the method add with two parameters 6 and 8, and you're saying it should be equal to 8. So this is what we are saying is the expected output. Okay. So this is it. Similarly, you have, let's say, again, keep in mind in reality that you don't have only one test case for a method. For example, even in add, you might have test add use case 1, test add 2, test add 3, and you try different values, adding 0 with 0, negative with positive, and so forth. But this is just an example, right? So here is just having one method, one test case actually. This is another test case to check multiplication. So this is input for the test case 6 and 2, and this is the expected output. This is what you're expecting. And this is done using assert. So you're saying asserts equal. So it's trying to say this is equal to this. If it is not equal, then it gives you an assertion error. And those assertion errors can be used to create the report, whether your test case passes or fails. Right? So this is the idea here. And again, keep in mind multiplication. The idea of multiplication, you will not have only one test case. You will have multiple test cases. So this is one of them. Another one you might add another test. Test multiply 2, and then you have another thing 6 and 2. This time you have, for example, 4,0 multiply 4,0, and of course your expected output is 0 and stuff like that. So you'll create a number of test cases. But this is just an idea to show you that you can use JUnit framework, and once you have done this, you can rerun again and again. So you can see it's all just execution of this code. So testing itself can be automated. That's the point here. So this is an example of how you're automating the test case. Do you have any question on this one? Let me know.
So the JUnit test is we write it on a paper and we just see the output, right?
Not on the paper, actually. This is a code, right? So first of all, you have to design your test cases. So you said my test case one is to check because these methods have two inputs, right? So I'll say, for example, input one, input two, expected output. You see here? So you say one of the test cases I want to try is 6 and 2 and expected is 8, for example, for add. There's another one for multiply, which is 6 and 2 and you expect output 12. So you create these number of test cases, and again, many of them. And once you have this test case design ready, you create your code and you put every test case as @test, @test, and you add this code and then you run this code, you execute this code. This code will tell you how many of those passed based on assert equals and how many of them did not pass, so that you know there are problems, there are failures. So this is execution, this is code.
Oh,
Is this,
okay.
yeah. So you create a class, you create a code called the unit test cases. For every class, you can create one class, which is the test class for that particular class.
Okay, so
in a project, if your project you have 20 classes, you might create 20 test case classes, each testing each class.
So why we just don't test the original class? We put an
That's
input.
how you send testing the original class. But how do you test it? Again, you might mean that why don't I run the class and give the input, right? Yeah, but then you have to do it manually. Every time you have to enter through keyboard, right?
Yeah.
And let's say you have for this class you have 150 test cases, assuming. How efficient do you think is to type in 150 test cases?
Not efficient.
Yeah, but then you might say, okay, but then still I'm still typing here these methods, 150 of them at the rate test, right? So where am I benefiting from? Where I'm benefiting from is, you see the point that these test cases can be run again and again. Let's say out of 150, two test cases failed. We said we are going to fix, so the implementer of this class will fix that problem. But once you fix it, you have to rerun all the 150 test cases, right? But now you don't have to recode this. This is already there with you. So you just run it, right? But if you did it manually, then you have to again execute your original class, and by keyboard you have to enter 150 times again. And assuming there was one more failure again, you go back, debug, fix it, and then again you enter 150 times all the test cases. It's not easy, right?
Yeah.
So that's why it's saying that if you write this test cases once, you can run many times as you want. It's all there, right? You just execute it. And this is unit test. What about then you have integration test? So you might reuse those test cases again and again. So that's the idea here. It's all about automating the test cases. Is this idea getting clear?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So this is an example, and assertions. So we said here there's a notation called @test, which is coming just before a public method, and that public method is the test case, right? So the test annotation indicates that the public void method to which it is attached can be run as a test case. Okay, and there's not only one thing called an assertion equals, because that might be applicable for this type of problem. What if there is something called true? You are testing a Boolean condition. True, false, assert true, assert false. You have not null. You're checking the object is there or no. Assert null, the object should be null, and stuff like that. There are long list of assertions. These are some examples of that. Okay, assert equals. So this object is equal to something, you know, dot equals. So yeah, this is also here in this case, of course. So again, this is the idea here. You can try many tutorials. These are some links for the tutorials you can use for JUnit testing. So, but now let's switch to something important right now, is the test case design. So the remaining part of the today, we are going to spend a bit more time on test case design and black box versus white box testing. So let me just share some ideas with you. Good. So I hope you can see the screen. The OneNote screen now. The blank screen, is it visible to all of you?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So let's try to. get this ready. Yeah. So here, let's see what we are doing. So let's try to introduce the idea of test case design. Okay. So we said in test case design, what we are doing basically, we are deciding the input and the expected output, and if there is some environment or test conditions which should be prepared to start the test case. So let's take one example, and to understand these test cases, we have to understand that there is an idea of what we call equivalent partitioning. And there is another concept which is related to it, is called and boundary cases. So what is the idea of equivalent partitioning and boundary cases? Equivalent partition means the range of values you give, within that range anyone behaves similar. So let's think about this. Think about adding integer numbers. So what is equivalent partitioning? You can think about this as think about this as a line diagram. So you have these negative values. It can go till theoretically till negative infinity. You have 0. You have positive value. Okay. Now you're thinking about, okay, if you add 2 plus 2, you get 4, right? But if you add, for example, 3 plus 3, you get 6, or 2 plus 3 equals to 5. 2 plus 3 equals to 5. So you say if you add any value here, it behaves almost the same way. So maybe you want to check 1. 1 is a special value. You want to see, because 1 sometimes behaves differently, especially 0 behaves differently. But from 2 onwards to any number, of course, has same behavior. All of these are positive integers having similar behavior in the respect to addition. But then negative values behave differently. So what you're saying is this is one partition, all the positive value greater than 1. 1 is a special case, so it's one partition. 0 is another special case, which is another partition. And similarly, -1 might be another partition. Okay. And all those negative numbers greater than -1 would be one partition. You see this idea? Then you decide, okay, if I want to do addition, I want to create test cases for addition. What we have to do is we have to select at least some test cases from each of these partitions. This is the idea here. Okay. But then you might know, okay, in this case, there is a positive, let's say you're adding integers. There's a certain limit in my language like Java. Integer can take a maximum some value, right? Depending on the size of the variable. So integer is how many bytes in Java? For example, let's say integer 4 bytes, right? So you have values. What it can take is basically 2 to the power of 32 maximum value. But of course it's signed, so you have half of it. 2 to the power of 31 and whatever. So there is an upper limit range. So here is the and this range. This is the max value you can take in Java integer variable, and beyond that you cannot take. It's invalid. You see here. So this becomes one partition. This becomes another partition. Similarly, if you speak about negative, there's a min you can take, a min value, and beyond that it's invalid because it's not a Java integer variable cannot take it. So then you do your test case design. So what will you do? So you'll say, okay, let me take one test case from this partition. So I say test case, let's say I say here test case number. And in this problem, addition, how many inputs do we have? You have 2 inputs, right? So let's say here I have input 1, input 2, and then I have expected output. So the idea of equivalent partitioning and boundary cases is that you take one typical value from this partition, or something in between, and one value from the boundaries. So I say, okay, one typical value would be, for example, test case number 1, I try adding 50 with 60, and the expected output is 110, for example. Then I know there's a max value, so I'll take that max value, whatever it is, right? So I take that max value and some other value. For example, another max. No, it won't be valid then. Then I take addition with, for example, yeah, max addition with something will be, the expected output will be what? If I add something with the max, it will be invalid, right? Because you exceed. Similarly, you might have another case, which is I take something like max over 2, and I get max. Similarly, this is one boundary condition here. So I have another case, which is, let's take 2 plus any other value. Let's say again another 2. I expect 4. So I covered all these one partition. Then I see, okay, let me think about this partition 1. So I add 1 plus 1, it becomes 2. So I covered this partition. I also want to cover 0. So I say, for example, 0 plus 0 should be 0, but 0 is special. So I say, okay, let's also try 1 plus 0. It should give me 1, right? Or for example, 0 plus 1 should also give me 1, and so forth. And maybe one typical value, 0 plus 30 should give me 30. So you see, just addition, how many things you can add. Then you say, okay, 10. What's one case? Negative number. So let me try negative number 1 with 0. It should give me negative 1. What about 11? Negative 1 plus negative 1. It should give me negative 2. What about a positive and negative? So you may say, okay, negative 1 plus positive 1 gives me 0. And what about again? So what I'm trying to explain you is this thing. So a simple thing like addition, you can get so many different test cases to come up with. And you want to try those to make sure that your addition is working soundly, right? So this is the idea here. So let's take this example, right? And try to create some test cases for triangle check. Triangle check problem. Okay, or maybe triangle check is a bit more, let's say factorial in that case. Okay, so let's try to do factorial, and assuming my program is designed that only I can create, I can come up with factorials. The valid inputs are in the range of 0 to 13. The valid range is 0 to 13, and I can get factorial of that. So think about this now. If I want to test my factorial program, what is the equivalent condition, partitioning and boundary condition? So again, you put a line here. You say, okay, 0 is always special. 1 in factorial might be also special. But from 2 to 13, if it works for 2, it should work for 3. Maybe it should also work for 4 and so forth, right? So 2 to 13 is one equivalence case. But because you are expecting only in 13, 14 onwards is invalid range. This is invalid range from here. And 13 is this valid range. So this is valid range. And anything below 0 is again
invalid.
Good. So you think about this, and then now you have to create the test cases. So you say test case number 1. What is the input? In this case, factorial, you have only one input. So you have only one input. Expected output. So test case 1, you want to try 0. What's the expected output? 1. Test case 2, you want this particular thing, because 1 is something as a special case. So I'm saying this is one partition, this is another partition, and assuming this is one partition. So I want to test case 1, it gives me 1. Now in this equivalent partition, there are more than one possible input. So I'm going to take the boundaries 2, 13, and one typical value, something in between. So test case number 3 is 2. The expected output is 2. Test case number 4 is a typical value between 2 and 13. Let's say 6. It has some value, right? 6 factorial, whatever it is. Then test case 5 should be what? 13, the other boundary condition. And we have some value for 13 factorial. So we covered all those valid values. Now we have to take some invalid value. So what we'll say? Let's try test case 14 factorial. And the output, depending on the specification, you might have a message saying invalid output, or you might throw some exception. So whatever is there, you'll have that condition. Invalid thing. Similarly, what about negative values? So this is one again conditions. You might try, for example, 7, try -1. It should say invalid. And maybe one more -5 saying invalid. So this is how you're going to create the test cases. Is this idea clear? So test case, again, as I said before, test case design is the main time consuming activity. It takes a lot of time for you to really understand the equivalent partitioning, the boundary cases, design your test cases and so forth. Takes time. Good. So maybe let's try to partially do one more last activity for equivalent partitioning is the triangle check. Triangle check. Okay. Now in my specification, let's say I'm writing a class or some method to, let's say a method to check the triangle. And what are the possible output of the method? It says equilateral. You know what is equilateral? Triangle. Where all sides are equal. So assuming A equals to B equals to C. Then you have something called isosceles. Right? You have some conditions, right? Two sides are equal. And then you have another one which is called scalene, where none of the sides are equal. Again, let's assume we are only testing these three cases. Of course, there can be other things like right angle, triangle, and stuff like that, but assuming this. But then there is another aspect is invalid triangle. You give values which does not make triangle, right? Invalid triangle. And assuming in the specification it says that it takes integer input. So what is specification saying me? Integer input. Okay. And it's saying the valid input is in the range from 1 to 10, assuming only these values, any integer value between 1 to 10, assuming this was the idea. So think about this and let's think how we can create test cases for triangle check. So again, if you think about this triangle check, so you have, of course, a special thing which is 0 always. Valid values are 1, 2. Again, I tend to treat 1 always as a special case, and 10 and 11 onwards, right? So you have, I'm sorry, 11 onwards. These are all invalid inputs, right? And these are all, again, as you go negative, all are invalid inputs, right? And the valid input range is from here, 1 to 10. As I said before, again, 0 this time is not valid. So keep this in mind. OK, it's always special to treat 0. So 0 is a special case. 1 could be special case. And then 2 to 10. Let's assume this is 1. And of course, this would be one partition. This would be another invalid partition. Now let's create test cases. So in this test case design, how many inputs do we have? In this case. No, how many different inputs we have? Triangle check.
3.
3, right? So we have this test case number. We have input 1, I'll say I1, I2, I3, and the expected output. So let's create some fun test case 1. So let's start with the valid case. It always says that if you have limited resource and time to create test cases, first go with the valid cases before the invalid. Why? Because first of all, what's more important for you is what is a typical usage it works. If it works, then your next concern is what if I give you invalid ranges? Does it catch it or no? But the most important thing is it should work for the normal thing. So that's why you should always create test cases starting with the valid ones. So think about valid. What are some of the things we can try? So you want to again try some inputs for equilateral, some for isosceles, some for scalene. Let's start with equilateral. So 1 is special. So I say 1, 1, 1, and for short brevity, I'm just writing E. Expected output is equilateral. But 1 is only one partition. The another one is boundary case 2. So I have another test case 2, 2, 2, equilateral. Right? What is the third one? The typical case between 2 and 10, let's say 5, 5, 5, it's equilateral. Test case number 4. 10, 10, 10, equilateral. Of course, we'll also now switch to, so these are all the valid cases for equilateral as equivalent partitions and boundary cases. Now we switch to isosceles, then we switch to scale-in, and then we go to the invalid ranges. So think about this now. What is test case number 5 for isosceles? Let me know.
1, 1, 0.
No, we don't want invalid first. Valid ones.
For what triangle?
Isosceles. Two sides are equal.
Yeah, we take an input, two are equal.
Yeah, so we take an input, two are equal. So let's say 2, 2, 3. It should say isosceles. But then we can also try 2, 3, 2, right? Because if 2, 2, 3 works, there is no guarantee that 2, 2, 3, 2 will also work. Similarly, 3, 2, 2. This is another thing to test. Are you with me? Make sense?
Yes.
Similarly, now
Yes.
you speak about a typical case. So you say, for example, 5, 5, 6 is isosceles. And similarly, 6, 5, 5 or 7, 5, 5 or 8, 4, 4. So you have to try all these different values. By the way, 8, 4, 4 is invalid, right? So this is also an interesting thing to keep in mind. Why is 8, 4, 4 invalid? 8, 4, 4 should not give you I, in a sense isosceles. It should give you invalid. Why?
Why?
Because sum of two sides should be greater than the third one. So if you have 8, 4, 4, you cannot make a triangle, right? So you have to be careful about that also. So that also comes from the invalid cases and so forth. So can you see from this example that even a small problem like triangle check, you can easily end up with almost like 30 test cases?
Yes.
It's very easy, actually, more than that. So that's the point here we are trying to make, that creating test cases is the real challenge. It takes a lot of time. There are work on automating creating of test cases, but still there's a lot of human effort needed and human insight needed in creating test cases. One last thing for today is the idea. So this was all about black box testing, right? So I'm creating test cases just based on the idea, the specification, the requirements. But I did not create these test cases based on the code. Now in code, very quickly, just I'll give you some ideas here. So if you're doing white box test cases, for white box testing. So I'm saying white box test case design. Just as an idea. Of course, the idea is still the same of idea of equivalent partition and boundary cases, but more importantly here, you want to look at your code. So for example, you have a code like you have statement 1, you have statement 2, and assume that the statement 3 is a if else. So you say statement 3 leads to statement 4, statement 5, or statement 6, statement 7. It goes as a if else. And then it goes back. I'm just giving you some ideas here. So statement 1 leads to statement 2, 2 to 3, 3 to either 6, 7, or 4, 5, and then you continue with 8. And then statement, let's say you have 9, and again you have if else, assuming. I'm saying here you have statement 10, and it goes back here. This is statement 11. It joins after statement 12, and then you have statement 13. Assuming something like this, very simple graph made based on your code. Now, what you're going to do in white box test cases, there are different criteria to decide test cases. One of the thing is this statement number, for example, 3 is a if else. Statement number 9 is a condition check. So you are going to read that condition. What is it? Is it a simple condition? Is it a compound condition? Something like and or something, and look at those values which can lead to and, which can lead to true, which can lead to false. You have to try all these different values. You see my point? And then you say, okay, how many test cases I have to design? The minimum I have to do, for example, is one idea is called statement coverage. What is statement coverage? If I want to cover, make sure that all the statements in my program executes at least once. Think about this, how many test cases you want? How many test cases you will need to design? The minimum number of test cases you will need to have statement coverage. Can you see? One possibility could be I run from here. It's true, I go down. True, I go down and I cover this one. So this is one test case. Another test case could be I go here, I design something so that it's false. I come here, I go back. It's false, I come here, I go back and then go. So it's telling you to do statement coverage, you need at least 2 test cases. You see my point. You cannot do with 1 test case. Are you following me? Right? But then there's another stronger criteria which is called path coverage. Path coverage. What's path coverage? It's saying no, statement coverage might not be enough. You have to look at this. So if you go like this, is one path. It's path number 1. If you go like this is path number 2. But what about you didn't go this one yet? What about if you go like this and then go like this? So this is path 3. This is another test case. What about you go like this and like this? This is path number 4. So you see all these different paths. So path coverage becomes a much more stronger criteria. You need more test cases to guarantee path coverage. Of course, sometimes you cannot even do it depending on the conditions, but at least as an idea. Now if this is done, then you say, okay, let's say this S3 is a condition which says check something, a condition 1 and condition 2. Now, if you go to this false, you might have gone through the condition 1 being false or condition 2 being false or both of them being false. You are with me, right? So what if I try one test case where only this was false and this was true? This was false, this was true. Another test case where this condition was true, this was false. Another test case where both conditions was false, I went to false. And of course, both of them is true, so that it goes to true. Similarly, what about this one, S9? What about if it was S9? So let's assume this was S3. What about S9 was condition 1 or condition 2? So this was false, this was false, this was false, this was true. But now if S9 was something of OR, then you say, okay, I have to test something false with true, which gives me true. I go to the main line, main body, if body, not else. But then what if I give true and false? It should also give me true. What about true and true? Of course, this also gives me true. And what about false and false, which gives me false? So this is more than only path coverage. You're even thinking that you went through this path based on which conditions and trying all those possible conditions which can happen and so forth. So you see, white box testing have different type of criteria. You can go more detail in the code, look at it and try to decide what all you need to test. Of course, we are not suggesting that you do this extensively for everything, because even in a small 2 if else, you can see that things can become too complicated. And what about if each one of them you think about equivalent partitions and boundary conditions and try different things? So many things to try, right? You see this point. So for example, you are saying if A less than B less than equal to B and C less than equal to D. Let's assume this was your S3. Now what about A was less than B? What about A? So this was true. The first thing was true because A was less than B, but it was also true because A was less than equal to B. So once you try A being smaller than B, once you try A being smaller equal to B. So you can do so many different test cases. Is this idea just getting clear? I just wanted to introduce you the idea here.